happen radio show. Putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Tuesday, June 11th, 2013. Getting into the week here. We have got so much to talk about. The floodgates are open, and it's just every day there's something else coming out. Just the shock and awe against the American people is well underway here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Manny is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on him with your concerns. And I'm sure you've got them from the email. You're probably just as angry as I am about all of this revelation. And again, it's not like it's new. We've seen all the stories about government spying on us all, reading our emails, listening to our phone calls, but this is so in your face. It can't be ignored. I'm getting all kinds of messages and greetings and phone calls from people who are saying, boy, 20 years ago I thought you were a real kook, and I guess you were right. And you're still a kook, but you were right. Anyway, we're just seeing all this stuff here going on, and where to start. Glenn Greenwald is out there saying there are yet more significant revelations on the government surveillance story yet to come. Now, Glenn Greenwald, of course, over there at The Guardian, broke this NSA story last week when he obtained this court order ordering Verizon to turn over 3 months' worth of phone call data to the NSA. And then it came out this was a continuing process. Every 3 months, the same order was issued, and every 3 months, Verizon was sending everything over to the NSA. And this is, of course, completely unconstitutional. They're just watching everybody to make sure you don't have an improper thought. The thought police are out there. Are you thinking bad thoughts about the government? Do you question the wisdom of private central banking? Do you dare doubt the holiness of the wars? Do you question the sacrosanct debts that we tell you that you owe to us? They're definitely worried out there. So Greenwald is promising more revelations yet to come. The government is in full-on propaganda mode right now, trying to defuse the situation. Both the New York Times and the Washington Post ran stories claiming they had conducted polls, and the majority of Americans were perfectly okay with the government listening to all their phone calls and reading all their mail and everything. In fact, there was a sizable portion of the population think that the NSA should go even further. Now, my advice is, I don't think you ought to be trusting the media that told you Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. Ask your friends, family, co-workers, co-students. Ask them how they feel about this. Because since this story broke as kind of a testing the bellwether feeling of the public, I have talked about this to everybody everywhere I go. The Feeding the Hungry program, the supermarket, the office supply place, we had to go in there, the hardware store where I'm buying plant growing supplies, and I talked to everybody about it. I haven't found a single person who is not absolutely furious about this. So for the New York Times and the Washington Post to come out there and say, see, we have polls showing all your friends and neighbors are okay with this thing, and you really ought to just shut up and go back to your slave pens. The first rule of propaganda, it must be believable to work, and this just isn't. I don't know, maybe they ran this poll in the parking lot of the NSA. Or they're polling the mentally insane. Or they give everybody free SSRIs before they ask them the question. This just isn't believable. And again, don't be paying attention to the corporate media that told you about Saddam's nukes. Go out and conduct your own informal poll. Decide for yourself how much opposition there is to this. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And if you're watching the corporate media, it's very obvious who are wholly under control of the federal government, either because they're friends with Barack Obama, they get rides on Air Force One, or they're getting late-night phone calls playing back recordings from embarrassing phone calls. Because the corporate media is splitting right down the middle over this NSA spy issue. And so far it looks like the majority of them are just as angry as the rest of us over this unconstitutional intrusion into all of the private aspects of our lives here. But there are some who are still trying to carry the government's water on this. Over at NBC, they're leading the attack against Edward Snowden, who's the former NSA CIA worker who blew the whistle on this whole situation. And MSNBC is out there trying to demonize him by saying, we know that he donated to Ron Paul. Oh, if anybody who supports Ron Paul and tried to, support him financially there, obviously that proves they're an enemy of the state. No, it doesn't. Ron Paul had a huge amount of support, and he was only kept out of the nomination through fraud and media complicity. We saw that in 2008. We saw that last year. And supporting a candidate does not make you automatically evil, but MSNBC is trying to use that. They're trying to find some way they can destroy the credibility of Snowden in order to indirectly destroy the credibility of his aspect of the NSA story. And it's important to remember that Edward Snowden only exposed the PRISM aspect of it. And other aspects of the story have come through other separate independent sources. So the story is really all over the place. I think the White House propaganda plan is to put all the focus on Edward Snowden so that he personifies the NSA scandal. Then they'll destroy him somehow and say, see, there really wasn't anything there for you to look at. This is classic propaganda knee-jerk reaction there. By the way, we're hearing about all these bomb threats over at Princeton University, Morristown High School, blah, 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 Atlanta. Desperate attempts to distract the media from the NSA scandal. That's what's going on. Pay no attention to government spying on the people. We've got bombs over here. We've got blood. We've got spectacle. Please don't pay attention to that. Look over. Pay no attention to that NSA spy behind the curtain. Look over here. Classic misdirection. It's like the bombing the Beirut Marine barracks. 24 hours later, they invade Grenada. Change the focus, change the story. But the corporate media and the independent media now understand that's how the government plays the game. We're not going for it. I'm sorry they had bomb scares in all these places. I'm sorry they had bombs in those places. It's not as important. It doesn't affect every living American, and this NSA spy scandal does. Not just Americans. It's turning out it is a global system, and other governments around the world are just furious about this. And they ought to be. And we're still hearing from all the NSA supporters out there, but, you can trust us. I mean, yes, we're collecting all of your phone calls and your emails but you can trust us, Isn't it kind of weird? We have this government that insists we, the people, can't be trusted with guns. At the same time, they're insisting that the government can be trusted with all of our private data. And we know that is a lie. History is against them. When J. Edgar Hoover was head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the Federal Bureau of Idiots, depending upon your interpretation of the acronym, he was legendary for his private secret files on politicians that did not contain evidence of wrongdoing, crimes, things like that, but information on their extramarital affairs, various other little scandals that Hoover used to blackmail politicians, even presidents, even John F. Kennedy. And that's why no president dared stand up to him. No president tried to remove him. Hoover was head of the FBI for life until he died or was assassinated. Do you think the NSA is somehow more moral than the FBI? Remember COINTELPRO? We've been talking about that a lot. That involved forged documents, framing innocent people, throwing them in jail, even assassination, the staged riot at Disneyland, the smearing of Gene Seberg, all of that stuff. That is what government does with the information it collects on you. We talked about the APEC conference up in Seattle, where the FBI and the CIA were caught bugging conference attendees and stealing business secrets to give to Clinton cronies. Provably, historically, government cannot be trusted with your private information. They should not be trusted with your private information. That's why the Founding Fathers wrote that Fourth Amendment in there. They knew that if government had the authority to simply go in and search through your lives at will, that they would simply take anything they found for their own profitability. That's why that Fourth Amendment is in there. The Founding Fathers understood government is inherently untrustworthy. Now, a light moment in all of this, apparently Anonymous has infiltrated the PRISM system, and they've hacked Barack Obama's Skype account. Okay? Now, Mr. Obama, you can't get upset about this. If you've got nothing to hide, if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to worry about that your Skype account is now being looked at by outsiders. So we'll see how that happens. John Boehner is out there screaming, Snowden's a traitor! And the NSA surveillance is necessary, and blah, 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 blah. Now, again, Boehner is ignorant of this nation's history. Hoover, APEC, COINTELPRO. And he's talking about proper safeguards. Okay, he said, Boehner's out there saying there are proper safeguards, civil liberties of Americans are absolutely being protected. But they said exactly the same thing in the months leading up to the COINTELPRO scandal. There were always supposed to be proper safeguards that kept the CIA and FBI from doing what they did at APEC. We're always assured there are proper safeguards. There never are. That's what the history shows. And Boehner's out there saying there are proper safeguards. We've heard that song and dance before. It means nothing. At this point in history, the U.S. government credibility is zero. If there were negative numbers on the credibility scale, we would be down there right now. The proper safeguard against NSA snooping is the Fourth Amendment. And the only truly effective remedy is to shut down those data centers and sell off all that equipment surplus. And if Boehner is not going to uphold his oath to the Constitution, he should resign. That, too, is a proper safeguard against abuse. To get rid of the abusers as fast as you can. Now, I want to address all these people out in the corporate media who are calling Edward Snowden a traitor. He's guilty of treason. Now, the definition of treason is giving aid and comfort to the enemy in time of war. Now, that's quite revealing to see these words being used to defend the NSA, because Edward Snowden has given aid and comfort to the American people. And so for the government to scream that he is a traitor and committed an act of treason, it betrays the federal government already sees the American people as the enemy, and a state of war exists between the federal government and the American people. Otherwise, traitor and treason is inapplicable. And I've been saying over these last months, when we see all this massive buying of hollow point, man-killing ammunition and guns for all these federal agencies, the federal government is preparing to declare war on the 50 states. And this screaming that Snowden is a traitor betrays that mindset. Because Edward Snowden offered aid and comfort to the American people. And he can't be a traitor unless the government sees the American people as the enemy in the middle of an ongoing war. Now, contrary to what Boehner is saying about proper safeguards and everybody being informed, the Senate is holding, closed-door briefings on the NSA surveillance. And the lawmakers are coming out and saying, no, they were not informed of what was going on. They were not told. There was, in fact, no congressional oversight on any of this. Maybe Boehner knew it, but Boehner by himself does not represent congressional oversight. Congressional oversight involves a multitude of people of differing opinions to make sure that personal prejudice, bias, blackmail, and corruption isn't going to decide the policy of the nation. Now, Ron Paul is out there. You know, that evil man that you are an enemy of the state if you donated to. Mea culpa. Is out there saying Snowden is a hero. And I tend to agree. He's also, unfortunately, sadly, a target. Because the federal government clearly thinks if they can destroy Snowden, they'll somehow defuse the whole NSA scandal. That's 1950s thinking. It isn't going to work here in the 21st century, but again, they seem to think that this is the way they're going to go. Ron Paul was on the Piers Morgan show, just blasting the defenders of the NSA's behavior and saying you're justifying dictatorship. And he is absolutely right. The mere presence of these systems to mass surveil the population is a hallmark of dictatorship. When the people of Romania rose up against Ceausescu and machine-gunned him to death on Romanian television, one of their major complaints was the total surveillance. TV cameras everywhere, phone calls listened to, mail being read. And we are there. We are in a dictatorship. This NSA scandal absolutely proves it. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. So Ron Paul is out there, so much for his retirement. And he's out there basically, screaming, you're justifying dictatorship, and that's exactly what they're doing. Every dictatorship spies on their people, whether it's the Stasi in East Germany, the GRU in the Soviet Union, the Gestapo in Nazi Germany. You are not a free nation when the government is watching every single thing that you do. And if you are not suspected of an actual crime, if there is no warrant based on probable cause, all of this is illegal and unconstitutional. And we know the pro-dictatorship faction in Washington, D.C., which sadly is most of them, wants to get rid of that Constitution. Remember, 2 months ago, we had these trial balloon articles in MSNBC and the New York Times saying, really, it's time to get rid of the Constitution. That Bill of Rights is just getting in the way of the smooth operation of the federal government. And now, with this NSA scandal, we can see what that smooth, efficient operation of the government is. In a nation with record poverty, record hunger, record homelessness, they're spending your tax dollars, billions and billions and billions of your tax dollars, to watch everything you do just to make sure, in their paranoid, sick fantasies, that you don't have a wrong thought, that you don't have a problem with what's going on in this nation. Rand Paul is out there saying it is the hypocrisy why people hate the government. We've seen this all the time. The last couple of presidents out there saying, if you love America, you have to love the government. No, the government is not the United States. The United States is 330 million teachers, bakers, carpenters, road layers. That's the United States of America. It's we the people, says so right at the top of the Constitution. The government is a caretaker. It's effectively the janitor, to whom, under certain rules and restrictions, we will hand the keys to the nation to take care of the place for we the owners. If they don't want to abide by that contract with America, the honorable thing to do is abdicate. If you own a business and you hire a janitor to take care of the place and you trust him with the keys, and you find out the janitor is selling your office furniture on the weekends to pocket some extra money, and the janitor's running around like he's the boss and says, you've got to do things the way I say, you'd fire the janitor, wouldn't you? You absolutely would. Tim Berners-Lee is out there calling the NSA surveillance an intrusion on basic human rights. The United Nations has already said this is a human rights violation against the American people by the United States federal government. We're going to take a phone call here. Michael in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Michael, are you there? Okay. Moving. Yeah. Oh, there you are. Okay.
There I am.
There you are. What's going on?
This NSA thing burns me up for several reasons, and this will be the only topic that I talk about because I'm furious about it.
You should be.
Number one, I'm furious about that people didn't pay attention because you, me, and everybody else that paid attention understood that this was happening. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when they floated Carnivore?
I remember that.
1997?
Yeah, I'm working on an article that talks about that.
And they brought it back in 2003. This was happening, and I was paying attention. So I tried to tell as many people as I could and give them verifiable sources, not give them the wacky ones, not give them the crazy ones, but say, hey, listen, this is increasing, and this is a violation of your constitutional rights. Nobody's listening. Now, this is the frustrating part. Even though that it's come out that this is happening, and you can see it everywhere, nobody's paying attention.
I disagree with that.
Still all not paying attention.
I disagree with that. Around here, like I said, I've made a point of talking about this everywhere I go. Supermarket, a hardware store, all the rest of it. Everybody I have talked to is angry about this. I haven't found one person who is in favor of this. I met one person who said, I don't like it, maybe it'll save us from terrorism, and I said, tell the people in Boston about that, and they sort of give me this look and say, yeah, it isn't working for that, is it? And I said, they're absolutely right.
Well, evidently you don't watch MSNBC, Mike.
No, I don't, as a matter of fact, for very obvious reasons.
Everybody's for it.
Well, that's why MSNBC's audience is in the Al-Qaeda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was watching MSNBC, the Morning Joe show, and I could not believe what was coming out of their mouths. It was just like, it's okay. And every guest they had on was like, it's okay. And the only guest that put up a fight was the guy who published the article in The Guardian. And I don't know if you've seen that clip. You got to see it. I mean, this guy says, what are you talking about? This is all verifiable. I have the documents. I published the article. I did my research. No. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Well, that's what MSNBC's agenda is. We're like I said earlier in the show, we're seeing the corporate media split down the middle over this issue, and there is a part of the corporate media that's going to be out there trying to save the government from the wrath of the people, and it's not going to work. MSNBC's viewership numbers are way, way, way down. Our readership is up. RBN's listenership is up. We'll be right back.
Hey, Mike.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And again, we shouldn't be listening to MSNBC about anything. They were one of the media corporate outlets that were assuring us Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. We had to invade to save the Iraqi people from the evil tyrant, blah, 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 blah. And right now, there is a full court press propaganda war to try and defuse this NSA scandal. And MSNBC has obviously signed on to the White House agenda, loyal little obedient lackeys they. Shouldn't be trusting MSNBC to tell us what to think and what everyone around us thinks, no more than we should trust the New York Times and the Washington Post for those obviously ludicrous jump-the-shark polls they claim to have. And don't take my word for it either. You should be going around to everybody you know and telling them what you know about the NSA scandal and say, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about the fact that for the last several years the NSA has been saving all your phone calls, all your computer data, every sexy message you sent to your significant other is in their computers, all of your potential business secrets that you're developing, new products for your company, government people are looking at those and saying, I could make money off of this. Because it has happened. Provably. And what is really dangerous about this NSA scandal, remember what I was saying about J. Edgar Hoover, used the information collected by the FBI to blackmail and control Washington, D.C. politicians up to and including presidents. Hoover was not an elected official. There were no checks and balances on him. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the government is going to be run by the head of a supposed law enforcement operation, which we now know was all about political suppression, the modern Gestapo. Hoover actually called his office the seat of government. That's how firmly he was in control with all this blackmail information. So just imagine what the people in charge of all that information the NSA has collected on our congressmen and the president, governors, mayors. Imagine what they can do to change the course of history in this nation, not for the benefit of the people, but for their benefit and the benefit of the money junkies who are calling the shots. The private central bankers are terrified. They understand this push for a global fascist dictatorship and a global central bank issuing the global currencies alone at interest has set the stage for a potential global revolution. That's the reason so many countries have these systems. It's not just the United States who are treating their population like livestock, where the owner gets to keep all these detailed records about how fast you're growing and how much product you'll produce. Canada's doing it. Bahrain is doing it. They're scared of you right now. That's what this means. They're absolutely scared of you. You are more powerful than the government has allowed you to believe and think. You are 330 million strong. And on the day when you all get angry at the same time, the world will change. There's a wonderful little video that's out on YouTube, and I'll reprise it to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com during the next commercial break. It's called The Tiny Dot. And if you have not seen it, you need to look at it, because it puts out in the clearest possible terms the complete absurdity of the entire American people bowing and scraping to this little tiny piece of land over there in Sodom on the Potomac and the people therein. Judge Andrew Napolitano is out there saying Edward Snowden is a hero because he exposed the violations on the Constitution. And he's absolutely right about that. The government doesn't want to abide by the Constitution. You are the only people who can hold them to the letter of the law, who can hold them to that contract. That Constitution is not there to serve the federal government. It is there to protect you from that government. The purpose of the Constitution was to free the people by making sure government was the slave of the people, not the other way around. Former CIA analyst Ray McGovern is out there saying Snowden did absolutely the right thing in exposing this potential for massive wrongdoing, for intrusion, for blackmail, for framing people. If the government doesn't like you, they can come over and take you to court and say, we have this evidence from the NSA that you've been doing all this bad stuff. Can I see the evidence? No, that's classified. Just take our word for it. You did bad things, and off to jail or a mental hospital you will go. Whistleblowers are not enemies of the state. They may be enemies of the government, but they're patriots. They want to get this nation back to the constitutional republic it was supposed to be. They want to end this devolution into fascism that we see occurring around us every single day. Snowden did not endanger the United States of America with his revelations. Glenn Greenwald is out there saying the only thing endangered is NSA's reputation. I didn't know they had one to be damaged. I know we've seen movies and TV shows that try and portray the NSA sometimes as the good guys. Not always. They don't get the free pass in Hollywood that the FBI does. But I don't think they're very good at what they do. Like I said, if this total phone message computer surveillance system really worked, Boston would have never happened. The Fort Hood shooting would have never happened. The crotch bomber wouldn't have happened, assuming you believe the official story on all those events. They could shut down every single major drug trafficker in this country overnight. They have all the information about their communications, their banking transactions. We're always being told there's an epidemic of perverts soliciting our children online for sexual purposes. They could arrest all of those at one time. They haven't. Maybe the system just doesn't really work. Just a huge waste of taxpayer money. Or maybe the NSA was perfectly okay with allowing drug lords and Wall Street cheats and perverts to go on rather than expose their little secret system. Too late for that. Or maybe this system was never about stopping the crimes of Wall Street CEOs or dealing with sexual perverts in and outside the church or even stopping terror. It's all about watching you to make sure you are not thinking a bad thought because the federal government is scared out of its collective mind that you have woken up to the reality of what this nation is. That you no longer believe all the propaganda you were fed in those state schools about what a wonderful nation this is and how they have all this respect for human rights and how they really, truly care about you, even as they allow you to starve in the streets of America while spending your tax money on these enslavement spy systems and wars and Israel and propping up Wall Street. Now, Edward Snowden is no longer in Hong Kong. Yesterday, John McCain was out there saying that the fact that Snowden was in Hong Kong proves China's our enemy and that this is a plot by China to make the U.S. government look bad. Well, China doesn't have to work at making the U.S. government look bad. Washington, D.C. is already doing that in spades. And Snowden was just a tourist in a hotel in Hong Kong. Doesn't mean China had anything to do with this at all. That's like saying that Massachusetts is a terrorist sponsoring commonwealth because the Tsarnaev brothers lived there, if you believe that official story. And at this point, anybody who believes the official story on anything, talk about being dangerously naive. At this point, the prime assumption is everything coming out of Washington, D.C. is an absolute fiction, fraud, fabrication, and deception. Now, yesterday we were talking about how Iceland might offer Snowden political asylum. Now, Russia has chimed in and said, yeah, they'll offer him political asylum. Meanwhile, the new head of the Federal Bureau of Idiots, James Comey, is saying, relax, America's in good hands, which is what they were saying in the months leading up to the exposure of COINTELPRO. No, it's not in good hands. It's in the hands of the money junkies. Their talons are sunk in deep. They don't want to let go here. Meanwhile, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper is sort of backpedaling and trying to get off the hook for having lied to the Congress on U.S. spying, and he's getting into these weasel wording situations where he's saying now he gave the least untruthful answer he could to Congress on U.S. spying. And it all depends on the meaning of the word collect. Remember back during Clinton when he was dodging the lies about Monica Lewinsky, and he says it all depends on what your definition of is. And so that's Clapper's excuse. Well, it all depends on what you mean by the word collect. So when they get into that weasel wording manipulation, you know they're on the defensive. And this scandal is not going away. Now, back in 2012, last year, when Wired ran a story about domestic spying without warrants, without probable cause, violation of the Fourth Amendment, the NSA chief back then denied 14 times in congressional hearing that there was any kind of domestic surveillance going on by the NSA. We now know that was a lie. The system had been in operation for 5 years at that point. So they are lying about that. Ed Henry confronted White House spokeslug Jay Carney on Obama's lie about congressional oversight of NSA spying. Because now members of Congress are saying, no, we weren't told, we didn't know. And Carney's backpedaling off of Obama's statement saying that all members of Congress were briefed on this program and they all signed off and said it was really kind of cool. So there's something you need to keep in mind. If they lied about the existence of the system itself, are they not in all probability lying about what it does and does not do? They're still trying to hide behind this idea that it's not really a violation of your privacy and your Fourth Amendment rights because they're not saving the content of the phone calls, only the metadata, and that's all they need to defeat terrorism. And again, the Boston bombing completely undermines that argument. But it is absurd to claim they're not saving the content. If they don't have the content of the call, how do they know it is a legitimate terror connection and not a wrong number, which is a reality of telephone life in the United States of America? 3 billion calls every single day. Do you think they all go through without a mishap? People slip the fingers on the buttons. The switching equipment itself sometimes glitches, gets a misdial. I remember one time a few years back where my phone rang, and I picked it up and said hello, and the person on the other side said hello. I said, who are you trying to reach? And they said, you called me. And somehow in the system, it had rung both of our phones at the same time and hooked us together. Glitch, computer glitch. It happens. Lowest bidder and all that. Quality of America's computer equipment. Kids will pick up phones and press the buttons because they see mommy and daddy doing that. And then they'll just put the phone down, let it sit there for a long time. They can't know that without the content of the call. The reliability of the metadata depends on knowing what the content of the call was. And as I pointed out yesterday, if you look at the size of that facility in Utah, and they're already building a second one in Maryland, if all they were saving was the metadata, who's the caller, who's the recipient, how long did the call last, what are their locations based on the address associated with the landline or the GPS data associated with the cell phone. If that's all they were keeping, to save every single phone call from every single American all the way back to the start of this program would only require 7.6 quadrillion bytes of data. And yet the facility in Utah has a data capacity of a septillion bytes of data. That's 1 billion times as much storage as they need if they were saving just the metadata. And because they're starting to build that second facility in Maryland, we may presume that facility in Utah is getting close to being full. So obviously they're saving something besides the metadata. Of course they're going to lie to us. They're trying to save themselves. These are not honorable people. They wouldn't be engaged in mass spying on every single law-abiding American if they had a sense of honor and decency and morality. So it's just amazing. And they're still out there trying to say, oh, yes, it's necessary, it's necessary. And as I said, something we need to be aware of. There's going to be a poison the well stunt, something to try and discredit the brouhaha over the NSA scandal. And that's why it's important to remember that it is not all about Edward Snowden. He exposed the PRISM system. Glenn Greenwald and legal documents from Verizon exposed the monitoring of our phone calls. There are stories and evidence from multiple distributed independent sources that show that this massive spy operation on law-abiding Americans has been going on all along. And I think they're going to set up Ed Snowden as the figurehead, the personification of the scandal, then destroy him somehow, hoping that will diffuse the NSA scandal. Oh, he supported Ron Paul. Really, we can just forget that whole NSA thing now. It's pathetic and it's desperate, but that seems to be the last card they've got to play. We have an article over at RINF.com pointing out that this surveillance information can be used to frame you. Somebody sent me a review on a book called 3 Felonies a Day. I forget the author's name. I was going to look into it as something for the website. And it basically points out there are so many laws in this country right now. You cannot go through your life day to day without committing a crime. And if the government is saving all the information on you, anytime they don't like you, anytime they don't like what you're saying, they'll basically come in and say, oh, well, back, 4 years ago you did this, and that's a violation of section blah, 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 and throw you in jail. That, too, is a hallmark of tyrannies. A plethora of laws that make it impossible to be a truly law-abiding citizen. And then the question of who gets arrested and punished and who does not becomes purely a political situation, as we see with all these Wall Street CEOs who made themselves insanely rich through fraud and corruption, and not one of them has been arrested yet, except for Bernie Madoff, who was ripping off his own people, and that, of course, is an unforgivable sin here in the United States of America. Yet another database has surfaced. This one's codenamed Main Core. And basically that's the name given to the list of potential troublemakers the government's keeping an eye on. I assume I'm on that list. If I'm not, I'm going to be very disappointed. But this is the list of people that will be rounded up and thrown into internment camps when the government says it's a national emergency. They know we're lying to them. We have to declare an emergency to save ourselves. I think we're getting close to the point where the government is going to try and find some way to hit the panic button, erase the Constitution, get rid of the Congress, and say, Obama is El Presidente for life. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take a phone call here. Alex in Texas. Aloha, Alex. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I was calling because I'm a little bit torn because I have some friends not just friends, I have family in the intelligence business, and I'm a little torn on how although I do completely agree with the information needing to come out, I'm a little torn with how people are taking it, in the sense of how they're blaming people like for wanting to be spied on, or for being okay with the whole spy thing. And I think that those sensitivities that are protecting some of the spies, those sensitivities need to come out to light to the American public, because a lot of times the American public feels, and not just Americans, the Westerners in general, they feel like it's okay to give up, it's okay to be a comfortable slave. to a certain degree. And I don't know. I'm kind of torn in because I feel like people should take responsibilities for themselves, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that would it be if it was out in the mainstream, but there'd be a lot more abuses going on, perhaps even of a greater nature. I don't know.
Well, let me stop you right there, because the whole point of this NSA revelation, those of us in the independent media who have been studying what this government is doing, I'm basically 20 years in my case. I've spent almost a third of my life working on this. We've known this spying was going on all along, but this revelation has forced all of America to wake up and realize that, yeah, it's going on. So there may be greater abuses going on that have not yet surfaced. We should not assume that we know the totality of the evil this government has been committing. Remember when the Abu Ghraib story broke, and America had to confront the fact that our government was torturing innocent people to death to find weapons of mass destruction that never existed. And there could be far more going on there. Most of the people in Nazi Germany, obviously the Order of the White Rose was an exception, but most of the people in Nazi Germany did not find out the totality of the evil that was going on until after the war was over. And the same is going to be true here. I guarantee you, we don't know all that this government has been doing. We find out they've been conducting...
I think the biggest thing is that's going to come out is the whole child, how there's a network of these children that all of a sudden disappear, that wind up in certain things for that are of more boast. I guess you could say, well, these guys they violate these kids. They hurt these kids.
We saw the beginnings of that with the Franklin scandal. And there was actually a documentary made on that was literally pulled off the air in TV, where members of Congress went to the cable TV industry and said, if you allow this thing to air in America, we will change the laws to make it impossible for you to make any money in this business. And so this was pulled off the air, and all copies were destroyed except a surviving editor's copy on that. That is the degree of control the government really does have over what you see on corporate media. Got to take a break for station identification. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And a story just crossed my desk here right now. Let's add it to Floodgate. Yet another gate for Floodgate. This is, we'll call it Medicare Gate. Apparently it has come out. At least 436 employees of the Department of Health and Human Services and more at the White House Office of Management and Budget received advance notice of an $8 billion Medicare decision that sent private health insurers' stocks soaring. And that means all of these 436 White House and Department of Health employees were able to run down to their broker and say, buy stock in these health insurers, and they made money. And this is a reminder of just why this government cannot be trusted with private information. Your private information. Now, a lot of focus continues to be on Verizon because they were the subject of this legal document that Glenn Greenwald reported to the world here. It's got to be all the companies. This system of NSA phone surveillance doesn't work if they're only going after one phone company, and obviously I'm sure Verizon customers are wondering, how many more months until my 2-year contract is up. Now it's come out. This is being reported over at Business Insider. Verizon set up a dedicated fiber optic line running from their servers in New Jersey to Quantico, Virginia, to allow government instant real-time access to all communications flowing through the carrier's operations center. Text messages, phone calls, data, emails, everything. It wasn't just a case of Verizon getting this little order from the FISA court to turn over the phone records. Verizon literally set up a fiber optic line to allow the government to snoop on all of their customers. And I guarantee you it's not just Verizon. Now, there's another project out there codenamed Boundless Informant. And it turns out the NSA has a system in which they track the volume of global surveillance data, where it's coming from, so forth and so on. And it contradicts NSA's assurances to Congress that NSA doesn't really keep track of all the surveillance it performs on American communications. And this map from Boundless Informant shows not only does the NSA know exactly where the surveillance is coming from, they are clearly directing it at high priority targets. Because if you look at this map, the greatest volume of NSA surveillance is in Pakistan and Iran and a lot of countries surrounding Israel. And then, of course, the United States itself. Now, the fact that this system and other revelations show that the United States is spying on the entire world, not just the American people, this has provoked anger and outrage across the globe. The European Union is absolutely furious. And they're demanding answers. How dare you spy on our people? After all, that's our job. And now it looks like European Union nationals were included with the spying. And that is illegal under international law and international treaties. Germany has declared this PRISM system attacks basic civil rights. They're basically recapitulating what the United Nations has already said. This is a human rights violation against the American people committed by the U.S. government. When Obama goes over to Germany to talk to Merkel, he's going to get a grilling over this. And unless he's got a recording of a particularly embarrassing phone call by Merkel to calm her down with, maybe he'll show her that picture of her skinny dipping on the beach that's been floating around the net. But this is going to be a major part of their talks. Europe is furious, and they are right to be so. I think we're coming up on a commercial break. I don't hear the music. There it is, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And as I mentioned before the break, Europe is up in arms about. In fact, every country on earth is outraged over this spy scandal. Because from their point of view, the United States is a foreign government that is spying on their citizens. And even setting aside the issue of a government spying on its own citizens without just cause, warrantless bulk surveillance, it's a human rights violation, certainly every country on earth has a right to be outraged when a foreign government is spying on their country. Unless, of course, in the United States and you're being spied on by Israel, which our government is apparently okay with. The Swedish Parliament is holding hearings on this American spying. They're very, very angry about this. And speaking of Israel, a lot of people are pointing out this weird situation where all of this NSA spying and PRISM and all the rest of it always seems to involve companies owned by Israelis with links to Israel's intelligence service. So is Israel the big brother? Is Israel trying to set up this global surveillance to make sure they can cling to their myths and legends that justify their existence and stealing of other people's lands? I mean, it's bad enough the U.S. government is conducting mass warrantless surveillance on every single American, but they're involving companies with known links to a foreign intelligence service. And don't forget, prior to 9/11, in the weeks just before 9/11, the FBI uncovered the largest foreign spy operation in this country in our nation's history, run by Israel. And it involved two companies owned by Israelis. One was Amdocs, which processed all the telephone records for every phone company in America, which gave them all of that who's calling who information. And the second was Converse Infosys, which was the company contracted by the government to build phone tapping into the telephone system. The days of having to go out into a switcher with alligator clips and attach a wire, those are gone. Have been gone for a decade. Law enforcement can type into a keyboard anywhere in America and hear your phone calls. Bahrain is spying on their people using a system they bought from Great Britain. This is just all over the planet right now. Now, over at Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch, Larry Klayman, as you know, started a lawsuit against NSA and Verizon for privacy Fourth Amendment violations. And he's now expanded it into a class action lawsuit against the NSA and Verizon, So if you are a Verizon customer, or you were one over the last 6 years, you are part of this class. And I am promising you right now, it will turn out it wasn't just Verizon. It's every single phone company was compromised. Anybody who refused was destroyed. We talked yesterday about the CEO of Quest, who was requested to allow backdoors into their customers' information. He refused. All of his government contracts were canceled. Then the government came in and said that because he was conducting his financial decisions on the basis of these potential pending contracts, that somehow represented insider trading, and they threw him in prison. He's still in jail. You do what the government tells you, or they do bad things to you. Is that democracy? Is that a republic? Is that even the rule of law? No, it's brown shirt territory, or in this case, blue shirt territory. We're going to go to the phones. Dan in Oregon. Aloha, Dan. I hope you're not eating any wheat products up there, and what's on your mind?
No, I'm not. But I have just a comment to make, and you can feel free to comment on it. One of the things I found interesting is that in the United States, that some of the so-called liberal internet stations have done a 180 degrees turn. For example, the liberal announcer Carell was absolutely ballistic on Obama and demanded that he be impeached. And I find that interesting that it, went to the other extreme where they're finding out their rights were violated, and they're just absolutely furious. So I just want to throw that out, that perhaps headways are being made not only on the right side but also on the left, that they are victimized too.
Oh, yeah, there's absolutely no question. They understand their personal phone calls and data have been spied on by the government. And again, what they all recognize is this didn't start with Obama. It's been going on for decades. Clinton was involved, Bush was involved, Echelon, all this stuff, and now everybody is realizing that, everybody in the United States is a victim of this scandal. It affects every single living American and people around the world, and they are furious about it. The ACLU, who was a big Obama supporter, they've gone back and said, no, this is way too much. This scandal has cost Obama a huge amount of his political support inside this country. People who were supporting Obama no matter what he did because he was our first black president and he was this and he was that and he supported our agendas, now they're finding out, Obama was treating them like potential terror suspects, and nobody's comfortable with that. And like I said, when the corporate media, when MSNBC and Washington Post and New York Times says, everybody's okay with this thing, don't take their word for it. They lied to you about Saddam's weapons of mass destruction. Go out and talk about this to everybody that you know. First of all, to make sure everybody does know this, and that they are all victims. That their little sexting messages they send to their significant other are being drooled over by the perverts at the NSA. Their business ideas are being looted. Government spies are going to the stock market and buying stock based on all this information they glean from your laptop, from your smartphone, from your tablet. And it doesn't stop terror, didn't stop Boston. And you need to talk to everybody about this, and you ask them, how do they feel about this? And you will find, as I did, that this idea that the majority of Americans are cool with this is just more USDA choice bovine excrement being shoveled at you as hard as they can. In fact, they've gotten out the largest snowblower they can to keep flinging the poo at you, trying to diffuse this situation here. Now, the ACLU, which, as I mentioned, has abandoned their blanket support for Obama at this point, they are now going after the Foreign Intelligence Service Court to see what this secret ruling is that everybody says justifies and constitutionally allows this spying on American citizens. Remember, earlier in the week, they're saying, there's a law that says this is legal. Can we see the law? No, it's secret. You can't look at that. We have secret laws you can't know about. That, too, is not in the Constitution. And I want to remind everybody about that first word in the Foreign Intelligence Service Act and the Foreign Intelligence Service Court. It does not have jurisdiction inside the United States of America. It was allowed to exist and function outside the United States where constitutional limits don't apply. It doesn't have a mandate for domestic surveillance, and that's why they can't reveal the law. So the ACLU's going after that. And they're not the only ones spying on you. Story that we had coming out of money at MSN. The IRS is tracking your digital footprint. They're out there scanning the internet, your eBay auctions, your Facebook posts, credit card, e-payment transaction records. Too bad they can't use all that spy tech to find proof the 16th Amendment was actually ratified. Now, we reported, I think it was 2 years ago, that the IRS was going out to Facebook and looking at pictures of your possessions to make sure you weren't buying things that the IRS didn't think you should be able to afford. That was unconstitutional. But the idea is once you put it on Facebook, you don't have a right to privacy, and there may be merit to that, which is why I don't put pictures of stuff on Facebook. I have some old pictures of my wife and I when we went to Catalina Island years ago. And it gets even worse than that. Another scandal coming out here. This is being reported over at 12160.info and Political Outcast. The IRS, having plenty of money, plenty of your money left over after all these luxurious resort conferences and all this other lavish spending here, they're buying spying equipment left and right. Covert TV cameras hidden in coffee cups and trays, plants, clocks. But not to worry. They're not deploying that stuff against you, the American people. They're spying on their own employees. So if you are listening to this show and you work for the Internal Revenue Service, your bosses are spying on you with the same technology NSA is using against the rest of it. How does that make you feel? Where you are there, that you're the Sir Guy of Gisborne's thugs running across the countryside stealing pigs and chickens for Prince John. Quite illegal, unconstitutional. 16th Amendment wasn't actually ratified. It's all a gigantic bluff to loot the people. You're loyally going along with this thing, and your own bosses still don't trust you. They're spying on you. They have hidden cameras watching you. They're probably monitoring your phone calls. They're probably spying on your digital traffic. Or maybe they don't need to. They'll just go to the NSA and say, we need a copy of the feed on all of our employees. Make sure that they're not out there reading websites about how the 16th Amendment wasn't actually ratified. Just like they've ordered the Air Force to not read any stories about NSA Gate, or they'll be charged with receiving classified information. Talk about the smell of panic wafting over the Potomac River. Got to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go to the phones. We have Steve in Colorado. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, great topics. I mean, good music, too.
Thank you.
Mike, I mean, you know, this is really deep stuff that's going on here. So we're being so overwhelmed, you know, and it's like some prayers have been answered because I've been praying saying, well, we need whistleblowers and we need so many of them. And this guy is definitely a hero, without a doubt. I just want to send that out there. But I also wanted to talk about Facebook. You just brought up Facebook, and about 4 years ago, when I was on Facebook, I'm not on Facebook anymore, thank God. I was only on for 2 years, and I realized there's some weird, strange stuff going on here. Well, a couple of some friends that I had on there warned me, said, Mike, we found out something, or Steve, we found out something, or John, everybody was telling everybody, all their names, all of us were all talking, like, hey, look, go on CBS. I said, what do you mean? Go on CBS and go on their site. You're going to see your own profile up there on CBS's website or NBC or one of those big media networks. And I said, well, why? Well, every time you type in the president's name, all of a sudden it would just go to their site, and it would go to his own site on Facebook, president's site, and your entire your entire profile would just show right up there. Mm-hmm. And the only way to get it off, I had a couple of friends that knew a lot about this stuff, computer, Mike, Steve, and some other guys, and that I knew were real good people, and they said, you got to get on there and delete everything that you put up there on that post, and boom, it goes away. Now, you tell me that's not spying on people.
It's definitely abusing their data, and my understanding is that there really is no way to get your data off of Facebook once you post it up there that you can delete it from your own profile and page, but that doesn't mean it's not gone from Facebook servers. And Facebook makes a huge amount of their money, not just from the advertising on Facebook itself, but they're collecting all this data about people and their interests to sell to marketing companies. And presumably the government as well. I mean, Facebook got named in this exposure about PRISM. And so they're not going to allow you to delete that information.
Well, you're right about what happened was, as soon as everybody found out that this was going on, I think there was like a court case or something against the creator, Zuckerberg. He said out loud and out in public, I don't care about anybody's privacy. Well, when that took place, that feature that was acting or reacting like that on Facebook no longer existed. We noticed that wasn't going on like 2 months later. A
lot of people complained about it. A lot of people complained about it, and especially, 2 months ago, and even to this very day, Facebook stock is still struggling to try and break even, and I'm of the opinion, now that we know that Facebook was, in fact, part of the NSA's PRISM program, I suspect that the only reason Facebook did not collapse following the IPO is the federal government is using your tax dollars to prop up Facebook the same way they prop up the rest of Wall Street.
Well, Mike, it's another great point that you're bringing up, the 16th Amendment, and I don't know if you ever heard of the TonerResearch.com or something like that about the original 13th Amendment.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. The Titles of Nobility Amendment, and that one just sort of vanished.
Have you ever gone to amendment-13.org?
No, I haven't. I'll take a look at it though.
All right, hey Mike. Take care. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch to Kim in New Mexico. Aloha, Kim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I just wanted to mention a couple quick things in passing that I'm not hearing about this phone data and metadata that are not being played, because I keep talking phone calls, but people are forgetting to mention that your cell phone is in constant, every few seconds, I think it's like 7-10 seconds, it's pinging the tower.
Yes.
Every time it pings the tower, it gets, at the very least, the location data available from the tower by comparing timing between signals of arrival at the different towers. So even if you aren't using GPS data, it is collecting within a few hundred feet accuracy where you are every 10 seconds of the day.
Yeah, it is, and that information is kept and is made available to law enforcement. In fact, I think this current NSA scandal is going to be an absolute boon to those companies who are selling things like GPS jammers or these metal cases. The manufacturer sent me one of these as a sample, where you just put your phone in there and it is completely cut off. If you're going someplace you don't want to be tracked, like you're stopping off at the local strip club on your way home from work and you don't want the NSA to find out, because they'll use that to blackmail you by threatening to tell your wife that you're looking at other naked women or something like that. And so these businesses are going to boom up right now. Everybody's talking about computer security now, not against hackers, but against the government itself. And I'm seeing all these articles about how to protect yourself from the NSA. I'm writing an article right now. Hopefully it'll be done today or tomorrow. That really goes into all of this stuff about depth, about all the times the government has backdoored computers, encryption and coding systems. We talk about Carnivore, Magic Lantern, the DES, Clipper chip, all of this other stuff where they're trying to say you must use government-approved encryption that we have made sure we can read. Got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the call, Kim. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and getting back to the recap of Floodgate. There are so many out there. We're just going to try and get through them all. Getting back to the Internal Revenue Service. April of last year, the National Organization for Marriage asked the Internal Revenue Service to investigate just who it was who leaked their confidential donor information to their top political opponent, the Human Rights Watch. Somebody inside the IRS took this information about who was donating money to the National Organization of Marriage and gave it to their opposing group, the Human Rights Watch. Another reason why the government cannot be trusted with your private data. The IRS's response to the request from the National Organization for Marriage is, we can't tell you who violated your privacy, because that would violate the Privacy of whoever violated your privacy. And as I said before, when you get into this kind of weasel wording, you know they got something to hide. Whether it's Clinton saying what the definition of is, and now the Director of National Intelligence saying, well, it all depends on what you mean by the word collect. They're thinking and talking like lawyers. And what they don't understand is ordinary Americans don't think like lawyers. They don't play games with words. They don't look for the cute little out or manipulation or maneuver. They see it for what it is. It's an attempt to blur the issue, confuse, distract, deny, and evade responsibility for their actions. Meanwhile, over on the corporate media, a very interesting statement by Representative Elijah Cummings, Democrat. He's out there saying the IRS scandal is over. It's solved. It's time to move on. Yes, there was a problem. We recognize that. That's all that's required. We fired a few underlings. Let's move on. And, of course, immediately he's being ridiculed all over the place. No, this scandal's not over. The IRS was used to target political opponents of the administration. This is an impeachable offense. It was one of the articles of impeachment against Richard M. Nixon. And for this Elijah Cummings to come out here and just try and pretend like it's over and done with and, we'll just let it go, tells us he knows this reaches all the way into the Oval Office, to his good bud, the Prez. This isn't over. The responsible parties have not been arrested and prosecuted yet. The people who were not enforcing the existing laws have not been called to account. I smell panic in Sodom on the Potomac here. We're going to grab another phone call here. Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Kyle. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I really feel like we as a country and as a people stand at a crossroads right now, and how we respond to these scandals, i.e. the IRS, the wiretapping, is really going to determine our fate over the next 10 to 15 years. If we allow these scandals to go unpunished, and if we allow these slights and these insults against our freedoms to just go, next week, next news cycle, so what have you, then shame on us. We really need to see that people are punished, jailed, and that these are brought to an end. Because if we don't, then it's just going to be a signal to the government, to the organization to turn that throttle up and keep on putting that beat against our head.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, but as I mentioned earlier, talking to people over this last weekend, people who weren't even paying attention to what the government is doing, who were living their happy little fantasy lives in their bubble of American Idol and, the next sale down at the shopping mall, even they are angry. They're paying attention. And it may be because of this rising anger that the powers that be are going to hit the panic button and try and complete their transformation, get rid of the Constitution and the Congress and declare national emergency, the rest of it. But I'll tell you, it's already having a major political effect. We're seeing all these groups who were supporting Obama and his agendas are turning against him. So Obama's domestic support for domestic policy is evaporating. Members of Congress who were standing by him are turning away and saying, I can't support you. It's going to harm my reelection now. Internationally, all these other countries on which the United States depended for support for these wars of aggression, even just political support, now all of a sudden they're angry with the United States of America. So the rug has been pulled out of a lot of the current federal government agenda, both domestically and foreign policy. So that damage has already been done, and that makes all of it worth it.
Well, and I certainly have a feeling that, for lack of a better term, the empire is going to strike back. I think that there's going to be, they can't let this continue. They need to have a distraction. They need to get. I agree.
And it's probably going to be a big one. They're going to set off an atomic bomb someplace in the U.S. and blame Iran for it. Israel's out there screaming that Iran is making 30 nuclear bombs a year, completely unsubstantiated. but they're trying to ramp up the hysteria and distraction, and it's not working. We've heard Israel cry nuclear wolf or nuclear duck so many times. We're just not paying attention to them anymore. But you're absolutely right. We have to be very much aware that the United States government, certainly Obama, are desperate for a distraction, whether it's a major escalation of the world war or even, crashing the financial computers and blaming that on China and Iran. They need something that is so grand and overwhelming it'll make people forget about IRS gate, DOJ gate, healthcare gate, state gate, EPA gate, NSA gate, PRISM gate, all of those other things. And that's going to have to be a monstrous, monstrous distraction. Something on the order of, setting off a nuclear bomb someplace in the United States to blame on Iran, or even staging a biological weapons attack in several cities. Short of that, I don't think people are going to turn away from Floodgate.
Well, and I completely agree with you, to be honest. Let me ask you this question. President Obama, I've always sort of seen him as the teleprompter-in-chief, the stuffed suit, the charisma man.
Aren't they all?
Yeah, but how much do you really think he knew of what was going on? Do you think that he was completely in the loop, or do you think that this was news to him just as much as it was to everybody else?
He's a control freak. He's a control freak. Absolutely, he knew all this stuff was going on. Don't forget, when he was campaigning for president, he spoke out against these abuses when it could be pinned on the Bush government and the Republicans. And now he's in office, and all these things he was going to change for the better, none of them happened. Yeah, he's known it's going on all along. We found out that the take from the PRISM program forms a major part of the president's daily intelligence briefings. There's no way he can't know.
Okay, so that puts a lot more responsibility on him. I always kind of had the feeling that he was just kind of the, public relations guy, and he was just there as a figurehead and let the smart people in the room handle the real work.
Well, I'm sure he's got a lot of smart people around him, but he is the commander-in-chief, he's the boss, and he's ultimately responsible. But again, it's not just Obama, because President Bush was involved in setting up this massive surveillance system. President Clinton was involved in setting up this massive surveillance system. The Republicans and Democrats in Congress went along with it. It is not any one individual. It is the system as a whole is tainted by this.
Of the conspiracy. That's the ultimate proof of this conspiracy, is this other, continuity of agenda. How one president, how Bill Clinton dismantles Glass-Steagall, George Bush exploits the loopholes left by the vacancy of Glass-Steagall, and then President Obama uses the stimulus to transfer the wealth done by the abuses of President Bush thanks to the loophole of Clinton with Glass-Steagall. That, to me, is ultimate proof that there is a overriding conspiracy, because there is a set, clear continuity of agenda from president to president to president.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the core agenda remains unchanged. What they argue about during the campaigns are the little fringe side issues like abortion and gay marriage, stuff that doesn't really challenge the power of the money junkies. But those core issues, the wars of conquest, the surveillance on the American people, those are never challenged or changed by anybody. I mean, Obama did criticize them during his campaign, but he didn't really mean it any more than he meant that he was going to shut down Guantanamo, end the wars, and bring our people home. He lied, he lied, he lied, he lied, he lied. Period. End of discussion. But Obama by himself could not conduct all this evil against the American people without officials and employees and these institutions willing to go along with that. George, we're going to let you go here. I need to move over to Dave in California. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to announce I've been kicked off another message board.
Good for you. You must be doing something right.
Apparently, I mentioned Israel in an unapproved fashion. Okay. And basically what you do to get kicked off message boards nowadays is to simply be frank and earnest about how Israel is conducting our foreign policy.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll pretty much do it in this country. You criticize Israel and it's all over here. I mean, Netanyahu's out there on TV saying that any criticism of Israel, for apartheid or war crimes, it's all really anti-Semitism. which, I mean, to me, that's like trying to defend Adolf Hitler by saying you're being anti-German. Hitler didn't do anything wrong. You just hate the German people.
Well, in any case, there is no actual freedom of speech that extends to that particular subject.
No, there never has been. There never has been.
So I've found that all you have to do is just mention that particular phrase in an unflattering manner, and you're gone. And they just close your account and you're done.
Well, so again, when they become that overt about it, it calls attention to itself. And it goes back to something I've said a long time ago. The fastest way to bring down a dictatorship is to force them to act like one where everybody can see it.
Well, I think we're just about there.
I think we definitely are there. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to George in Texas. George, thank you for waiting. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thank you for posting my article. You know, I'm hearing all this thing, Obama must resign, Obama must resign. Well, you know, I made a list of at least 10 members of Congress that need to resign along with the president because they've been complicit along with this NSA state.
Even that doesn't go far enough here because you've got an entire city and governmental structure full of people ready to step up the ladder and just keep on doing what they're doing. It is the system as a whole. Right now, this NSA scandal shows the federal government has violated the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment, and the Tenth Amendment. They're batting 500 in the dictatorship World Series right now.
Well, yeah, it was just an idea because, like I said, these entrenched politicians created the system.
Well, it's been going on for several administrations. We can't just get rid of a few and think the system as a whole will improve. I mean, the entire system itself, that's the problem. And as long as it keeps us enslaved to that private central bank issuing the public currency as a loan at interest, they can't fix the problem. We're just going to have to let it ride down to destruction. We are at a degree of exposed scandal that is similar to what was going on in the Soviet Union just before it fell apart. I don't think this banking system and this government are going to survive the rest of the year. I really don't. The question is, are they simply going to collapse and go away the way the Soviet Union did, or are they going to try and set off a big bomb someplace, declare martial law, and try and solve their problems that way? But that, too, will not last.
Well, the thing is, false flag is now a kitchen table term.
That's why they're hesitant to do it. They saw how quickly we ripped apart the official story of 9/11. They may be desperate enough to try one and make it so big that everybody will be so shocked they won't start asking questions, but that's very problematic. The danger here is that we have people who are caught up in wishful thinking and it worked before and we'll do it again, plus we know at least 10% of those people are on prescription antidepressants, so they're not making good decisions right now.
Well, you know, speaking of spying, you know, General Petraeus saying they're spying on through my washing machine. I think I found a transmitter that's supposed to transmit to my smart meter or whatever. And the thing is, it could be, you know, the thing is, they say, oh, we can spy through your appliances. Well, think about this. We might be able to remove it. You know, remove that technology. So we at least wash our clothes without being spied on.
Well, they're spying on everything at this point. You know, apparently there's a big stink over the new Xbox where it has a mandated TV camera in it, and it has to be connected to the Internet, even if you're playing a disc-based game for software licensing. We know all the new TV sets have built-in TV cameras, ostensibly to support video chatting systems. But all of this technology, which has a positive use for the people, it can be and is being subverted for this total surveillance state. They used to call it total information awareness, huge public outcry, and they didn't stop to practice. They just rebranded and said, oh, we got to keep this secret from the American people. No, you're not allowed to keep things like this secret from the American people.
Well, you know, I got to pull up the story of my website. I'll probably repost it. Comcast Cable put out this system where, say, from your iPhone, you can check on every camera in your house to see if your kids are doing your homework or the house is a mess, and you can adjust your thermostat. And I basically said, you know, the police can dial in now and see what you're doing in your home.
That's exactly right. That's why I won't have those systems in my house.
Well, you know, Comcast Cable asked me to pull that. I haven't. Well, I said, I don't have service, so.
Comcast asked you to remove an article pointing out that these home security systems that go out over the Internet open you up to spying. Comcast asked you to take that down?
Yes. That was a year ago, and I just basically just said, I don't have your service, nor do I want it. So, thank you.
Okay.
Can't do nothing to me.
All righty. Well, listen, we're coming up here on another commercial break. The phone lines are really loading up. A lot of angry people out there about this. And, again, when the government is watching everything you do, they don't respect you as a citizen. They are treating you like livestock. They are treating you like property. They're telling you what to eat, what not to eat, what medicines you must take, what medicines you cannot take. They are acting as if they believe they physically own you and everything in your head. That is not America. That is not America. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I think the upshot of all of this, and there's a lot of very angry people out there. The phone lines are filling up with them. It's an ugly situation out there. And as I said before, it's been known for years the government was building this system, total information awareness, backdoors into computers, mandating required systems of encryption the government knew it could read. All this has been going on, but it was always sort of, those wacky tinfoil hat, cuckoo conspiracy theorists. Well, the conspiracy theorists were right. And it is a conspiracy because when two people get together and agree to do something, that is the legal definition of a conspiracy. The biggest conspiracy theory of all is the claim there are no government conspiracies. Everybody agrees to that inside the government. There's no such thing as a government conspiracy. We got them. NSA gate, IRS gate. People agreed we're going to target these conservative groups for harassment. That's a conspiracy right there. Global warming. Huge conspiracy now exposed to everybody. And this NSA gate in everybody's face has awakened the American people. Remember, we used to talk about Admiral Yamamoto's comment about Americans being a sleeping giant. But once roused and filled with a terrible anger, I think we've just had that moment. People who weren't paying attention, now they're paying attention. And as I said, it's already having a devastating effect on the administration's agenda, both domestically and foreign. People who were supporting Obama and his agenda, now they're angry. They're turning away from him. The ACLU's backed off supporting him. All those foreign nations the U.S. was relying on for political and sometimes financial and military support for this campaign to force the world back onto Bretton Woods. Now they're angry and less likely to go along with these absurd wars of conquest. Going to go back to the phones here. Bill in Texas. Aloha. Bill, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Bill,
there you are. Yes, I'll make it quick. There's a lot of different lists, people talking about. But when I worked for the Miami Police Department with the radios in their computer system, there was a list of not to pull over or basically houses to go to. And I don't know how to get on that list, but most of it was related to politicians and their kids and relatives. And I don't know, like, if you were rich enough, if you got on that list. But there's a whole do not pull over or disturb list that the police have. So when they type in your license number, it comes up on the screen. Just leave them alone, keep going.
Well, I'd love to see some documentation on that. I know in Los Angeles, when I still lived in Southern California, the police department sold its own license frames. It had KMA 367, which was the radio call sign for the LAPD radios. And if you had one of those on your car, you never got a ticket. We'll be right back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We are going to go back to the phones here. Scott in Arizona. Aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike. I'm here, Mike. You there?
Yes, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Great. Hey, I had a question for you. I'm reading this Anonymous Infiltrates the Prison System, and I'm confused as to who they are, what their political agenda is, what their motives are, and if they presumably have access to all of this stuff. Why haven't they delivered the coup d'etat for this administration? And
well, let me tell you what I think they're about. I've always been very dubious about Anonymous because they were part and party to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, which seemed to be an intelligence operation to try and take the high ground for the online independent media discussions. And you're absolutely right. They've been targeting newsworthy, spectacular targets, and my concern was that Anonymous may be used to justify more draconian controls over the Internet to deal with the hacker threat. But occasionally, I guess in order to protect their reputation, they have gone after some very, very interesting targets. But you're absolutely right. They always announce they've broken into thus and such, but no really meaningful, usable data seems to come out of it.
Okay, so we really don't know who they are or what they're about.
No, I really don't know what they're about. The fact that they were allied with Julian Assange, for me, is grounds to be very, very cautious about them. Going to let you go here. I want to get to some other phone calls here. We're going to talk to Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? We may have to take you through the next commercial break.
Oh, that's okay, Mike. I appreciate you taking my call. I just learned about something last night and on another network that I listen to as well, and I'm going to share that link with everybody here in a little bit. And, Mike, I think you're really going to love this. So everybody get your crayons out because you're going to really – I think you're going to get a kick out of this one. But two real quick comments real quick. You were talking about the IRS having the resource and money and time to look at people's eBay accounts and all of this, that, and the other. I remember back during the healthcare debate when we learned that some $80 million or so of Medicare fraud was taking place every year. It seems to me that would be a better use of resources to find the people who are frauding the Medicare system. I mean, call me crazy, but I think that would be a more worthwhile endeavor. And the other thing was, oh, shoot, I can't even think what it was. But
well, okay, we're almost out of time on this segment, so let me follow up on that. Absolutely. If the NSA is keeping all of this data, they are in a perfect position to prosecute or provide evidence leading to the arrest and prosecution of these Wall Street fraudsters, politicians getting bribes, American drug lords. Very clearly, this NSA system is about protecting the government from the people. It's not about serving the people, dealing with crime, dealing with terror, like the Department of Homeland Security, like the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The agenda here is to protect the government from the people. And that once you understand that's what their real goal is all about, everything they do is making perfect sense.
It is. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention was it was interesting you were talking about that one case where they were trying, when I hear words like, we can't tell you who it was that accessed your information and violated your privacy because that would be a violation of privacy. What that tells me is it's okay to invade an individual or a group's privacy as long as we say it's okay, but the rest of you can't do it.
That's basically what it comes down to. It's hypocrisy, it's double standard, it violates the Equal Protection Clause, and basically it's a red flashing neon sign. They are covering up yet another abuse. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back with more phone calls. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Questioning Citizen in Connecticut. Aloha, welcome to the show. What are you questioning today?
Hi, Michael. Well, I'm not questioning so much. I'm agreeing with you really on what you said, that I think this is the end of this whole shebangs here. And I base this, I'm sure you know, that this in November 22nd in 2013 is the date of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I think it was a 50-year plan that was hatched by a group of Zionists. I don't think they were the only ones involved in the Kennedy assassination.
No, they certainly were not. They certainly were not.
And I think they were the ones who were involved in the cover-up. But they certainly worked with Johnson, who I think was the go-to person, or sort of like more or less in charge of what was going on, or organized it.
Actually, no. Now, I didn't like Lyndon Johnson, okay? But Johnson was brought into this plot at a very late stage, and he had been informed through sources that Kennedy planned to drop him in the second term. And he found that out from one of his own staffers who happened to be roommates with Mary Jo Kopechne, who would later on figure in that whole Chappaquiddick situation. And so Johnson saw his political career coming to an end. If he was kicked out as VP, then his eventual run for the White House was just not going to happen. But he was not the mastermind. He was just a co-player. And when the assassination happened, the people who set it up, CIA, the Texas oil billionaires, Israel, because Kennedy did not want Israel to get nuclear weapons,
exactly.
And all the rest of that. The goal there, at least from the CIA's point of view, was to, their original plan was to blame Cuba for the assassination. And they laid that whole bogus trail of evidence that Oswald was not only communist, he'd gone to Cuba, he'd gotten materials from them. That's the reason they planted that Mannlicher Carcano on him. It's the world's worst shoulder weapon. In fact, the one that Oswald was supposedly using was defective, had a defective scope, couldn't hit what it was being aimed at. But that happened to be the rifle that Castro was then importing in large quantities to Cuba to give to the Cuban people in case there was a second U.S. invasion. And that was the reason they used that particular rifle, to try and build a case against Cuba. Well, Johnson knew the inside story of the Cuban Missile Crisis and knew that Kennedy and Khrushchev had come to this agreement where the U.S. was not going to invade Cuba anymore because Russia would then launch a nuclear war. And so Johnson had a real problem. He needed to derail that agenda. And so what he did is he went to the defense people, the defense contractors, and said, forget about Cuba, I'll let you play over in Vietnam. Going to be less consequences from that. And then set up this whole lone, crazed nut cover story in order to prevent the second invasion of Cuba, which would have led to a nuclear war. And as much as I dislike LBJ, we do have to give him credit for at least doing that and not letting this thing escalate the way he did. Now, as far as any kind of a continuing plan from Kennedy's assassination to the present day, there was no grand single plan. What you have are various factions within the government, each seeking power, each seeking wealth, and they come together, and out of this convoluted mishmash of competing agendas comes our national policy. I don't think anybody planned for the United States to collapse. The situation is they can't hold it off any longer. So thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over to Sonny in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Sonny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I just want to let you know that your show yesterday inspired me to type out a letter and personally hand deliver it to my Representative Mike Kelly in Western Pennsylvania regarding the Edward Snowden incident. And I expect that he'll be getting back probably within the next week. And just wanted to say thank you. Keep up the good work.
I will do my absolute best here, and good that you're out there taking overt action. That's what everybody needs to be doing right now. I'm getting emails saying, what can we do about this? And as always, my advice is the very best thing you can do is speak out about what's going on to everybody you know, to help educate and inform the public in a nation where the corporate media is still shoveling the U.S. government's bovine excrement at you. And by speaking out, you not only inform and educate the people around you, you will give others around you the courage to speak out as well, because one of the big myths corporate media and government has been trying to sell everybody for all these years is that anybody questioning the government is an isolated lone kook nobody wants to listen to. And so you have this image of a room full of people, and everybody in there knows something has gone horribly wrong with this country, but they keep their mouths shut because they figure everybody else around them is perfectly okay with what's going on. And then they open their mouth and say, there's a problem, and everybody else in the room speaks up and says, I thought I was the only one who saw this. I mean, look at those bogus polls the New York Times and the Washington Post tried to pawn off on the people earlier today, where everybody in America is okay with the NSA recording their phone calls. That's completely unbelievable. And as I said, talk to your friends and family. Now is the time to speak out. Now is the time to just push, because the government is, the fortress around the government is crumbling. It is breached in numerous locations. IRS, DOJ, EPA, State Department cover-up scandal. The healthcare workers getting inside trader information. They're full of holes right now. Now is the time to push. Now is the time to get out there, talk to your friends and family. Now is the time to write letters to your newspaper. Now is the time to support Republic Broadcasting. We're in a fist fight, and the first one to quit loses. We are literally in a war for what is left of the soul of the United States of America. And if we are all acting together, 330 million Americans, the federal government cannot stand against us. We're the nation, not the people in Washington, D.C. We the people, 330 million Americans. We're the United States of America. That's why at the top of the Constitution, it has those 3 words written larger than any other. We the people. This is our nation. And it's got to be run the way we say it has to be run. And the federal government knows we have woken up from this hallucination of what this nation is supposed to be that we've been fed by the state-controlled schools and the corporate media and Hollywood movies and all this other stuff. We've taken the red pill. We see the matrix for what it is, to use another metaphor shamelessly. Now is the time to get out there and make as much noise as you can, call everybody, text everybody, email everybody. Yes, the NSA is going to record it, but it's not going to be a surprise to them that the American people are angry. Or if it is a surprise to them, it shows just how completely disconnected from the real world the government has become.
2 different pizza shops, and I talk to people from all walks of life, and it's everybody's fed up.
Yes.
It's not just a little undercurrent anymore. It's out in the open.
It absolutely is here. I mean, the anger over this revelation or this forcing people to confront the NSA shows that the American people are ready for this bogus war on terror to be over. We are tired of the crotch groping. We're tired of having our luggage looted by the TSA workers. We're tired of being told we can't have our Swiss Army knives on board the airplane. The TSA still owes me an expensive laptop that they dropped and broke up in Seattle. All of this scanning and skin cancer and all the rest of it did not stop the Boston bombing. All the surveillance on all of our communications did not stop the Boston bombing. It does not work. It's time to let it...
I'm sick of all these government agencies lying to my representatives. They either lie under oath or they don't show up under subpoena. If I were to not show up for a traffic summons, there would be an arrest warrant for me. And these guys are lying under oath. They're just not showing up under subpoena to our people's representatives in Congress. And they just walk away from it. I don't get it.
That's exactly the problem. We have gone back to a feudalist society where people above a certain level are immune. They're untouchable. The law can't touch them. The Congress can't touch them. Nobody can touch them. They can't be arrested. Like all those Wall Street CEOs engaging in massive fraud to strip the real wealth of the American people and put it in their pockets, they haven't been arrested. Nobody behind the mortgage-backed security fraud that triggered this economic crisis has been arrested for their crimes. We're supposed to be a nation under law where everybody, up to and including the president himself, must obey the law or suffer the consequences. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to that. And everything that they're doing, it's all about, we got to stop terrorism, and obviously what they're doing now doesn't work. We're hated around the world. Boston still happened. Fort Hood shooting still happened. Crotch bomber still happened, if you believe the official story. I don't. I think all of these things are more cover-ups and deceptions and hoaxes and staged events. There's only one way to stop terrorism. And that is to stop messing around with other people's countries. It's the only way. All right, Sonny, we're going to let you go here. We're coming up on the end of the show, and I got to get a few more stories here. Apparently back in 2008 on the Jay Leno show, and Jay Leno, he's just taking this in stride. He was the other night on his show, he was saying, America wanted a president who was going to listen to them, and now we've got one. But apparently back in 2008, Hollywood actor Shia LaBeouf, who was in the film Transformers, was on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and said how he was told by an FBI consultant the government was spying on your phone calls back then, 2008. It's been known. It's even been known in the general population. The difference is now everybody knows it, and they're pissed off. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And they are circling the wagons over this scandal. The rage is growing across the land and around the world. Steny Hoyer, Democrat, of course, from Maryland, is defending the Obama administration's domestic spying programs, saying that unlike the secret surveillance under Bush, the current programs are legal. That doesn't make them right. Slavery used to be legal in this country. We recognize that was wrong. And I challenge Mr. Hoyer's claim that these are legal, because the Fourth Amendment applies. If this secret surveillance was illegal under George W. Bush, it's illegal under Barack Obama. It was illegal under Bill Clinton because they're violations of the Fourth Amendment. You cannot write a law that bypasses the Constitution. The United States Supreme Court ruled in Marbury versus Madison, laws repugnant to the Constitution are automatically null and void. They can write words on a piece of paper and say it's the law. It is not. And we, the American people, are not obligated to obey unconstitutional laws. Period. End of discussion. Now, up in Canada, back in 2011, they were launching their secret electronic eavesdropping system on everybody in Canada. Welcome to our world. And then Defense Minister Peter MacKay approved it, gave it the green light. We know who authorized this. Yes, we've got to be able to watch all of those Canadians to make sure they're thinking only happy thoughts. And of course, now he's having to backpedal because the scandal here in the United States has prompted a similar sense of outrage up there in Canada. And so today, Defense Minister Peter MacKay is saying, well, we're only saving the metadata. We're not saving the content of your phone calls. That's what we were being told last week. And we have already pointed out why this has to be an absolute government lie. And the same thing's going to be up in Canada. They're already breaking all of the laws. You think they're going to stop at the actual content of the calls? Of course not. The storage capacity of that facility in Utah only makes sense if they're recording and saving the phone calls themselves. Otherwise, they really can't tell the difference between a legitimate terror connection and somebody who dialed a wrong number. They can't. The data from that phone monitoring system is not reliable unless they have the content. Now, an interesting article over at internationalman.com where they're saying the NSA scandal shows the importance of offshoring your digital presence. This is something we're starting to see pop up all over the industry journals, IT, data systems, all of it. They're saying it's time to get your data centers out of the United States of America. Now, the NSA program does appear to be global, but we do know that here inside the United States, the NSA has direct links to the major providers, like that fiber optic cable for Verizon, and the lines that are going right into Facebook and the rest of it. If you're in another country, at least you have, 1 or 2 levels removed, and the possibility of your being able to put up some security to protect your business secrets from the prying eyes of government insider traders is a little bit more secure. And as I said earlier in the show, makers of products like these little cases for cell phones that absolutely isolate them electronically from the world, they're taking off right now. And it's not that we have anything to feel guilty about. It's not that we've committed any crimes or we're doing anything wrong. It's a matter of principle. The government does not have the right to simply come in and look at what you're doing just in case. The Fourth Amendment is the law of the land. And if the government does not want to live within the restrictions of the Constitution on which their authority resides, the proper and honorable thing to do is abdicate. Now, getting over to EPA Gate. Apparently there's a new aspect of that scandal going on. Apparently the EPA has been leaking private information on farmers to the radical environmental green groups. And apparently the EPA released farm information for 80,000 livestock facilities in 30 states to environmental organizations without the proper authority. And again, it's a reminder of why you should not trust the government with your personal data. They'll just use it for political purposes. Use it for insider trading. Use it to get a giggle. Use those scantily clad photos of your significant other to whack off to late at night in those data centers. And again, can you get the irony here that we have a government that insists we, the people, cannot be trusted with guns, but demands that we trust the government with all of our personal data? It is that hypocrisy which underlies much of the anger and rage right now. Now, getting over to Stategate, where we're finding out some of the representatives of our nation are behaving badly in other countries, and apparently it was a huge scandal that was quashed, and it's now reached Hillary's chief of staff as the author of the cover-up. One step removed from Hillary herself. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and I'm looking at the closing on the American stock market, and all the plunge protection team's horses and all the plunge protection team's men could not put that Dow in the green again. They did make an effort of it. They had it slightly in the green early in the morning, but it just went downhill after that. Huge sell-off volume at the very end. The trend is definitely there, and they're trying to shove that thing up. Remember, all these Wall Street banks, they're trapped. They've been buying so much stock to keep the market propped up, to keep investors in the market, to keep investors in the banks. Don't let them go to that yellow metal gold stuff, because we can't make money off of them. And now they're stuck. In the event of a major downturn, all of these major Wall Street firms will be instantly insolvent. And the weird thing is, we've been seeing the stock market rout all over the globe, and yet surprisingly, somehow, magically, the gold prices are down today. That's counterintuitive. Before the era of rigging, when the stock market went down, gold would go up. And obviously they're playing fast and loose with those paper contracts. We know that the government of Britain was starting to investigate whether the London gold and silver fix was being rigged. And now they're transferring that gold and silver fix over to, I think it's France, so they can evade the investigation. Doesn't get more obvious than that. Corporate media is still trying to pound on Edward Snowden. They're hammering on the point that he supported Ron Paul and he was a high school dropout. Well, if these were all problems before, just how did this guy get hired in the first? How did he get a top secret security clearance? Those are not easy to get. But now that he's blown the whistle on the NSA spying on all Americans, they've got to demonize him, and they've got to find some way to make him look like a wide-eyed tinfoil hat, kook conspiracy wacko that we shouldn't listen to. Well, we're listening. All America is now listening. NSA is listening to us. Now we're listening back here. Apparently, Obama has decided to put off signing that small arms treaty from the United Nations until August while Congress is in recess. And I'm wondering why he wants to do that, because the way it works under the Constitution, Obama can sign anything he wants, but it is not the law of the land until Congress ratifies it. We have been hearing from within Congress they have no intentions of doing so. They can't get the votes. So Obama could sign it now. It doesn't make any difference unless he's planning something when Congress is in recess, like implementing the treaty with executive order. And Congress doesn't get back in time to rescind the executive order, because the way executive orders work is they come from the White House, they go in the Federal Registry. Congress has 30 days to look at the executive order, and they can vote it null and void. And so maybe Obama is going to sign this treaty, implement its provisions through executive order, and say, well, Congress is in summer recess, they're not going to be back in time. A lot of presidents have taken advantage of that. Very underhanded, nefarious situation, and I understand with Floodgate, with all these gates engulfing the federal government, they know they've got to grab all the guns from America before we get really angry. It's going to be hard enough returning us to our slave pens if we're disarmed. It'll be impossible if we're all packing heat. And 80% of American homes have guns, and ever since they started the gun grab, guns are flying off the store shelves. The American people are actually more armed now than they were when they started this whole gun grabber nonsense. Apparently, the CDC is undertaking a study of gun violence and the gun violence epidemic. Pointedly, they are not going to examine the connection between prescription antidepressants and these acts of violence. The agenda is we've got to blame the guns. When you pick up a gun, the evil spirit living inside that metal thing crawls up your arms into your brain and forces you to do evil things. And they're scientists, so we must believe them, or something like that. The White House has now convened a meeting on the Syria escalation, meaning the White House is trying to figure out how they can escalate this situation before Assad's troops succeed in kicking out the hired mercenary army from Aleppo and Homs, which will be the end of this whole covert attempt at an overthrow. Over in Pakistan, their government has finally had enough of the drone strikes. Pakistan's new prime minister, in office for less than a week, has said that there are going to be no more secret approval of U.S. drone strikes. Apparently his predecessor was doing a nod and a wink to these drone strikes into Pakistan that were killing all these innocent people. Last week we reported how declassified documents showed that in at least 25% of the drone attacks, they don't know if they're actually hitting the intended target. That's a really lousy success ratio, and of course the real statistic we need to remember. Every time there is a drone strike against an intended target, an average of 50 other innocent bystanders are killed. And I'm not surprised Pakistan has sort of had it with that whole situation here. Apparently there's been yet another large explosion near the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, and so Obama has his excuse to keep our kids in Afghanistan way past the original promised exit date of 2014. Going to keep them there until the oil and opium runs out. And then if your kids are still alive, they'll be returned to you addicted to SSRIs, post-traumatized, and all these other things that you'll have to take care of because the government can't be bothered here. The Guantanamo Bay hunger strike is growing. There are now 41 people who are daily being strapped to a table and force-fed through a tube. Over in Turkey, the government has just completed a, for all intents and purposes, military operation to sweep the protesters out of Taksim Square. And it involved massive tear gas, brutality, armored vehicles. They're trying to get this thing under control. Erdogan is out there saying that I have no more tolerance for protesters. I'm sorry, but when you're in a democracy, protesters are part of the job description. And Erdogan, I think, is making the situation worse. He may brutally crush down the protests today, and it doesn't look like it because it's still going on in other cities. But that does not end the problem. It simply builds the anger until the flashback happens here. The United States Embassy in Israel is warning Americans to stay away from the Golan Heights. They're basically signaling that Israel is getting ready to go cross the Golan into Syria, grab a big chunk of it, try and kick off this direct military intervention to topple Assad. Now, Russia is questioning the UN's claim that Russia cannot volunteer their troops as peacekeepers in the Golan. The official story was that because Russia is a member of the Permanent Security Council, that their troops are not allowed to be peacekeepers. But it was immediately called to their attention that the United States is also a permanent member of the Security Council, and their troops are functioning as UN peacekeepers all over the world. So Russia is already assembling what they're calling the Golan Brigade, and they're getting ready to basically deploy into the area. There'll probably be a bit of a political fight at the UN over that. Russia could simply deploy and put their troops on the ground and say, we're peacekeepers, you, Israel, stay out of Syria, you, Syria, stay out of Israel, end of the war. That, of course, is not what Israel wants. It's certainly not what the United States wants. They need this thing to escalate. They need to finish the conquest of Syria so they can go on to Iran. And right now, Obama needs a really big war as a distraction from all these scandals. They're still thinking in 1950s Cold War mindset, We'll get a big war going someplace, and those American sheeple, they'll forget all about the looting of their lives by the bankers. They'll forget all about the targeting by the IRS and all this spying by the NSA, and they'll salute the flag like loyal, obedient, patriotic Americans, and they'll throw their money and their children onto the designated enemy's bayonets. That's what they're thinking. They actually think it's going to work, and maybe it worked in the 1950s. But that was a long time ago. This is today, and the American people are awake and aware as to what's really going on. I don't think a new war is going to solve the government's problems. I think a new war is only going to make the situation worse and just push the government that much closer to a collapse. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is out there screaming, it's anti-Semitism to accuse Israel of war crimes or violating human rights. That's getting pretty absurd. That's jumping the shark territory. And like I said earlier in the show, that's like defending the Nazis by saying you just hate the German people. You're being anti-German. You're being anti-Aryan. The Nazis didn't do anything wrong. You just hate the German people. And it's absurd, and we laugh at that. And yet Israel continues to get away with that. Yes, they're violating human rights. Yes, they're committing war crimes. Remember, they were using white phosphorus on civilian areas during Operation Cast Lead. That's a war crime. Netanyahu was saying, you can't accuse us of using white phosphorus. That's anti-Semitism. But you did do it. Yeah, we did it, but it's still anti-Semitism to point it out. That's how absurd this whole thing is here. Meanwhile, Israel's intelligence minister, Yuval Steinitz, is out there saying that Iran is producing 30 nuclear bombs a year. They're back to pushing this whole weapons of mass destruction. If nobody has found any evidence that Iran is producing nuclear weapons. Iran historically is not in the habit of invading other countries in wars of aggression. They haven't done it in over 200 years. Israel does have nuclear weapons. Everybody knows it now. Israel has a history of belligerence. And they're still out there trying to scream weapons of mass destruction. You, the Americans, have to send your children to crush our enemies over there. Same thing they did with Iraq. Israel was wearing the short skirt and pom-poms and cheering the U.S. on for the invasion of Iraq, screaming that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. And that, too, was a lie. All right, we're going to grab a phone call here real quick. Art in Maryland. Thank you for waiting, Art. And what is on your mind?
Hey, Mike, do you ever listen to Ralph Winterode, who's on this network on Sunday nights?
Every once in a great while.
Well, he's got documents from the FDR administration that proves these agencies are outside of the Constitution. They don't have to abide by the Constitution.
No, I would absolutely challenge that. They may think they're outside the Constitution, but they can't declare themselves outside the Constitution. And that's absolutely, I don't care what paperwork he says he has. It's a fraud and it's a hoax.
Well, he would gladly send them to you, and he'll send them to anybody that asks for them.
Well, he can send everything he wants over here, but the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and no aspect of the government is allowed to operate outside of it. They may think they do, they may decide they do. We have this horrible problem of what's called the true believer mentality. People inside the government who think they're exempt from the rules because they serve a higher, more noble policy purpose. And every one of those people who have had that mindset have led this nation into disaster after disaster after disaster, and many of them have wound up in jail or impeached for thinking that. These government agencies funded by U.S. tax dollars are constrained by the Constitution. And if they are not, they need to be shut down. And at this point, it's a systemic problem. It's not a few bad apples. It's not a few rogues down in the Cincinnati office. It is systemic. The system as a whole has gone completely corrupt and criminal. It is signed into alliance with the Wall Street fraudsters, the drug traffickers. We have a criminal government. And that is why it's so easy for them to ignore the laws and to ignore the Constitution. They are by nature not feeling constrained by the law. That is by definition a criminal government when they operate outside the Constitution. They're illegitimate. They've lost all legitimacy at this point. Anything else?
Nope, that was it.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Nobody can say the Constitution does not apply to us in government. They can't. It was set up that way. The Constitution was written to keep the people free by keeping the government the servant of the people, to keep the government subordinate. Look at the biases written into the 9th and 10th Amendments. That tells you what the goal was. The people are presumed to have all rights, even if they're not enumerated in the Constitution. The government has no power and authority unless it's enumerated in the Constitution. That 4th Amendment is the law of the land. I don't care what legal fiction they come up with or what piece of paper they have to wave around. There are no exceptions. We, the American people, need a zero-tolerance policy. You are either constitutional or you are not the government. And you need to get angry. Remember that wonderful movie Network, the Howard Beale character. And he says, things are just going bad here. I can't even tell you how bad they are. I don't even know how to fix it. But I know the first thing you have to do is you have to get angry. I know we're always being propagandized that anger and rage are inappropriate and you should calm them down and go through anger management. But we evolved to feel those feelings for a reason, because it is necessary and beneficial to our survival that we are able to feel rage, anger, hate. They're built into us for a reason, so that those who are a threat to us and our families, we will have the emotional energy to deal with them. Anyway, over in Iraq, 94 killed, 289 wounded. Looks like Iraq's turning back into a battlefield. That's going to be a tough sell to the American people. We already went in and conquered, and there were no weapons of mass destruction. There were no nuclear bombs here, and Saddam is gone, and the oil is being sold only for U.S. dollars. How are you going to convince the American people we have to re-invade Iraq all over again? That's going to be a tough sell. Meanwhile, down in South Africa, a group of lawyers are demanding that Obama be arrested when he visits down there. And they're asking for a war crimes investigation and prosecution. That's going to be embarrassing. Meanwhile, over in Nevada, the governor of Nevada has set up a hotline asking whether or not he should veto this proposed gun control bill. Yesterday he said he was going to. Now he's waffling wishy-washy. And apparently you can call 775-684-5670, press number 2 to ask for the veto. And it's 15 seconds, and we do have this posted to whatreallyhappened.com, so you can look up at the number. Just dial the number and press number 2 and tell them, yeah, veto the gun control. Because, again, the Second Amendment is the law of the land. And the United States Supreme Court ruled in John Bad Elk versus United States, the Second Amendment specifically reserves the right to military weapons to the people. If the Army is carrying it, we have a right to it. To deter government tyranny. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're just finishing up here looking at all this stuff, and the TV's just going on. They're trying to bash on Snowden just as hard as they can. Meanwhile, over at silverdoctors.com, Jim Willey is warning that there is a new major financial scandal about to break regarding what is called the allocated gold account thefts. And we were talking about this last week when people were going to their allocated gold brokerages. And by allocated gold means that you specifically have these particular pieces of gold, these bars with these serial numbers that are held in the vaults for you. And people who are going to their brokerages to get their physical are just being handed other bars of gold, which indicates they're playing fast and loose. They're just trying to keep everybody happy. And apparently it is now estimated that these allocated gold brokerages are short something like 20,000 tons of gold they were supposed to be holding for private investors. Just like the Bank of France and the Bank of England and the New York Federal Reserve appear to not have all the gold they were being paid to store on behalf of countries like Germany. So the entire financial system is being run as a criminal enterprise and supported by a government that is running as a criminal enterprise. And that's the big awakening I think we're all going through right now. We don't have a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. We have a nation of the money junkies, by the money junkies, and for the money junkies. And this nation is being run for their benefit, not for the benefit of you, not even for the benefit of the nation itself, certainly not for the benefit of your children. They see you as property. They own you and everything in your head. You are being treated as livestock. You're being treated as property. When a government lies to you like this, they have zero respect for you. They don't see you as a citizen with rights. They see you as chattel. And you've got to ask yourself right now, do you want to be owned? And if you do not, it's time to start making some very, very hard choices. So these scandals are going to continue to bloom, and as I said before, right now, I'm sure somewhere in the government, they're wondering if a big new 9/11 false flag is their best option to get the wars going, to get past that pesky Bill of Rights. Big, huge bomb someplace or some anthrax spread on a couple of cities. They're thinking about it. They're probably worrying it won't work because of how quickly we tore apart the 9/11 fraud and the Boston fraud and the rest of it. The lifespan of a government deception can be clocked with an egg timer in this day and age. But they may be desperate enough to try. Certainly Obama is feeling desperate right now to find some way to shut all of this down, to refocus our attention somewhere else. A big, huge smoking crater in some American city that's a GOP stronghold. Or outright war with China and Russia. We need to be on the alert for this kind of thing. All right, there's the music. It's time for Claire and I to get out of here and get something useful done with this afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. A reminder, we are in a fight for the soul of this nation. We need your help, every little bit. There's no such thing as too small a donation. Please go to republicbroadcasting.org. Look at that little donate button. Every little bit helps. We're in a fist fight. The first one that quits loses. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.